This is BofC Live, the video and podcast series of Business of Cannabis. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com. Coming up on the BofC Live segment, we are connecting with Scott Kenyon. He's the CEO of Wurk, which is an HR-focused cannabis tech compliance firm. Here is this conversation with Scott Kenyon. Scott, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
I'm excited to have you because I like cannabis. That's sort of my my go-to, but I am also interested in, well, the technology that powers the whole ecosystem of cannabis, but also especially technology that either was developed specifically for cannabis or there is needs for cannabis specific versions of what exists in the outside world. Am I talking to the right guy?
You are, for sure.
Good. Tell me about Wurk before we get into it. Tell me a little bit about the technology and sort of the need behind it for cannabis companies.
Yeah, so Wurk's the largest payroll and HCM provider for cannabis. HCM is human capital management. So think of it, it helps you recruit and hire employees, but the real meat of the product is after you've hired an employee, how do you help them bring them on, help develop them, help manage them, help set schedules. So our platform was built with cannabis in mind and really helps to solve a lot of the challenges that cannabis has that other industries don't.
Which are compliance, rapidly changing regulations. Like what are the key things that exist in cannabis that your tech sort of addresses that isn't addressed by other tech out there?
Yeah, it's like you said, compliance is the big one. Early on in our formation of our company, and we're about 7 years old. We're about to turn 7 years old. We had the IP around getting banks to certify or take on cannabis customers. So we worked with a handful of banks around the country and said, hey, here's the process we're going to go through with our customers. And they would tweak it a little bit, then they'd be comfortable. We'd meet with the auditors. So, even though it's federally illegal, there are ways for cannabis money to be moved within the industry. The hardest thing still is just for consumers to pay with something other than cash. But we've made it easier, and we haven't solved that. And we won't really until
if you did, though. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but really, I mean, imagine we're the largest, as I said earlier, the largest payroll provider in cannabis. We moved over $3 billion last year in cannabis, and we'll move anywhere between 4 and 5 billion this year. So we're not talking this is some small mom and pop industry. There's serious dollars going around
and getting bigger, right? And I guess that's the question, right? You're talking about being 7 years old when it wasn't nearly as large as it is today, and there were even more hesitant banks out there to sort of work in the cannabis realm. But as companies like you, and if I'm a bank, you are ensuring the compliance component, you're making sure everything is on the sort of inside of a business, compliant, up to date, even with constantly changing regulations, and massively growing workforces must be challenging too. Like those are the things that the bank wants to know about in order to take those deposits, yeah?
For sure. And what a bank really wants is as low risk as possible, right? And cannabis is risky because it's so hard to operate in. But we're able to eliminate the risk to a degree where they're comfortable with it. Allows our customers to worry about other things that they don't need to worry about their banking relationship because they've gone through all the hoops that we've put up in front of them.
Got it. Let me ask you a question. I mean, I am a cannabis business, but I'm a cannabis business. I'm growing rapidly. I'm in one state or many. Like, what's the sort of core size of a company that would call and say, we need your help now? Or generally when they call, did they need it like 6 years ago? like if they're calling, or is it already too late?
Yeah, I would say our small business customers probably needed it 6 to 12 months ago. But their company expanded rapidly, which is great for them and something that they probably thought they could do on their own. But when you go from 6 employees to 18, it's a whole different game. Also, I think I talk to a lot of small business owners who have had other small businesses outside of cannabis, and the amount of time just to stay in compliance with state regulators, they didn't have to deal with that when they owned a laundromat or a tire shop or whatever. So what they realized, things they used to spend time on, they don't have that time anymore. And payroll is a prime example of that. So that's where I'd say in the small business. In the larger enterprise space, they've been on it for a while. And our product is built for mid-sized to enterprise customers. That said, small business customers are on our platform all the time and utilizing it as much as large enterprises.
Let me ask you a question, because you mentioned sort of state regulators, and many of the businesses that I'm sure you work with, and if you go on your website, you'll see like are operating across state lines, right? Or I mean, they have employees in multiple states. Like that's not, now it's more complicated, twice as complicated. It's actually more than that. If you're running a business, right? You're running in 4 legal states. It's not 4 times more difficult. It's actually some multiple of that because of the different regulations, but you're operating as an enterprise. Like I assume the technology sort of addresses those complications that, as you said, mom and pop, or even another, a car dealership that operates in 3 states isn't dealing with.
Yeah, and let's just an example of that. It's a great point, Jay. An example is California. We have, the industry has grown tremendously in part-time employees, but part-time employees, if they go over that part-time allotment, they get triggered for overtime, right? Well, if that overtime happens to be on a Saturday, Sunday in California, that comes not just at time and a half, but an extra piece. Well, in the, prior to joining our platform, that small business owner would have had to go in there and make those manual adjustments. Here, it's just automatic. So again, just one less thing that somebody has to worry about.
Yeah, it's complicated. And that's California, which is, well, you're in Texas, which is not Texas. Let me just say that, right? Like it's just not Texas, right? But New York looks a lot more like California than Oklahoma does, right? I mean, it is a complicated business, and as you grow, becomes more complicated to operate across, in different states. Layer on top of that, compliance around cannabis, and even layer upon that this really critical relationship that you are now sort of lined up for with banks, right? It all becomes very, very challenging. And as you sort of look ahead and the new markets, like it seems to me, and you'll tell me with some of your clients now, like it's not getting easier, it's getting more complicated. And even though, you're talking about banking regulations in DC, like it is getting more complicated because the companies are growing so rapidly and it's incredibly competitive. So like it's not 3-dimensional chess. It's almost something more than that. They need to have their ducks in a row, is my point, as things evolve and sort of you're answering the call to that.
Yeah, and it's even with my own organization, we see this. We and the biggest MSOs have this, where they have experts in their states, right? And we have that we have 50 states. Well, not all. We're not collecting tax in all of them, but all the taxes, states that we have cannabis companies in, we're collecting taxes. So I have to have experts in, Arkansas, as well as Michigan, as well as Oregon, Colorado, California. So, all of our employees should be, trained at a general level, but we have specific training for tax and then employment laws that people have to follow that we have specialty in. So we're no different than an MSO in that aspect, and that's just part of being in cannabis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you could have a whole like big whiteboard. Well, I'm sure it's not a whiteboard, it's technology, but like, and just, start kicking down what is unique about that state. You talked about California overtime regulations, clicking over whatever that sort of hourly rate it sort of is. And I guess the one question that's sort of left to ask is, do you keep everybody in line with the big sword behind you?
There's 2 swords behind me. Those are and behind the worksheet is my great-grandfather's discharge from the Army in 1863.
Wow.
So, yeah, my mother never liked them displayed in our house. And I, as a kid, you go through every closet in the house, and I found these in the closet. And when I was a grown adult, I said, "Hey, can I take those?" And she was like, "Yes, please." House. And now my wife is mortified that they're on the wall.
And now they're on Business of Cannabis, so it's okay.
Yeah, but it's right next to Smokey the Bear. So
Oh, I
I'm
like
really
that.
confident that
Safety first.
yeah,
Only
exactly.
you can prevent forest fires.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
it happens to be true, although that
Yeah.
isn't actually true anymore, but I still like smoky. Scott, I want to thank you for your time and thank you for giving us an insight into work. We look forward to connect with you down the road and keep up the good work.
Hey, thanks, Jay.
You got it. That was BofC Live. If you like this program, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find us wherever you find your podcasts. We're able to do what we do because of ongoing partnerships with Alterna Savings, Cannabis at Work, Cannabis Benchmark, Can Delta, Gallagher, Headset, and Torque & Mains. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com.